Good afternoon, or evening, or morning, or whenever you're watching this. Welcome back to Talk Like That with me, Mark Dallas, the dialect coach, and many other things. Today, I will be interviewing Krista Barzso. I think I correctly pronounced that. We'll find out. She'll let me know when she comes on. Anyway, she is an actor. She is also, well, in film, stage, TV series. She is also a uh, battle stage fighter type person. She'll also tell me what that is correctly called. And she is an intimacy coach. So, and she'll talk more about that too. So here is Krista Barzso. Welcome to Talk Like That.
Hi.
How are
Yeah,
you doing,
I think
Krista?
you pronounce that better than I do. Um,
Oh, how do you pronounce it?
Growing up in Canada, it's Barzo.
Oh,
Um,
that's wrong.
it's definitely incorrect, but it's also like the Canadian version of it. You've said it much closer to the correct pronunciation.
It's a Polish name, right?
Hungarian.
Hungarian. Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Hungarian. So it would probably have a little accent over the O or something.
I
Who
don't
knows?
know. I do know that the time that I went there, I was like finally in a country where that ZS combination makes sense. Everywhere else I've been, people are like, "I'm sorry, how do you spell your name? What is going on?" I'm like, it's not that long a name. I promise. The
Yeah,
ZS makes a lot of sense if you're in Hungary.
right. Yeah. And one thing that surprises me about here in Canada is that for somewhere that has a lot of people from other places in the world, it's so surprising how many people just cannot pronounce those non-Anglo names.
Yeah. Well,
But
like even when I say it, like if I say like Barsho, like it's not correct. Like that's not because I don't have that um the musculature and like I'm not used to that accent. So I Canadianized it.
yeah, yeah, of course. Well, you're Canadian, so that's how it goes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with the questions,
Okay.
and I just wanted to know what inspired you to become an actor, and how old were you when you became an actor, or when you decided to become an actor?
This is a question I get all the time, and I never really know how to answer it because I think like I've always been a stagehand since I was like this big, like it's if there was a stage, I'd be like on it. If there was a solo, I was taking it. Like, so I think for me, it wasn't so much deciding to become an actor as much as discovering that I always was one.
Right.
Um, there were times in my life when I tried to take the responsible adult route and do other things and get real jobs, and my soul just died. Um, so it was just kind of like it's been a lifelong process of just understanding, like, no, this is who I am, and it's not going away. And the
Yeah.
only way I'm going to find like fulfillment is to actually pursue this and jump in wholeheartedly. So here we are.
And I think that's the story of a lot of actors. I mean, so many I've spoken to have said much the same thing. Like they knew from very early on when they were very young, and then even despite everybody telling them that, oh yeah, 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 actor, but what job do you want to do when you grow up?
Yeah.
Like, I want to be an actor. It's like, yeah, 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 sure, honey. Okay, now back to your coloring book.
Yeah. Well, you still get that. Like if you go to a party and people are like, "Oh, like what do you do?" And you're like I'm an actor. And they're like, "Okay, but what's your real job?" I'm like, "Listen, anybody watching this, do not say that to the actors in your life. It will crush them. Their real job is acting. They get paid for something else. That's not their real job. Um,
Right.
it's just a real paycheck per
Yeah.
se. But that's not. It's so soul crushing. So you're like, that's not, I don't want to talk about that. Like that's something I endure so that I can act. Like it's not the thing you want to discuss at parties. You're like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Well put. Um, so you've appeared now in a lot of TV shows, and you've been in movies, stage productions over the past 7 years, something like that. And I was just wondering, which role are you most proud of, and why?
So That's a really hard question. It's I try to take pride in all of my roles, like even the really small ones, the itty bitty ones. Like it's a chance to use your artistic expression and to delve into a character and bring someone to life. So I try to bring that to all of my characters. But I'd say a couple stand out to me from stage productions mostly. But there was one about, I guess, 7 years ago, and that was in a play called There Goes the Bride. It's a farce, and I played Polly Perkins, who is a figment of the main character's imagination. Like she's not a real person. She lives in the 20s, and she sings and dances everywhere, and she gets to mess with people because they can't see her. So you get to really have fun with your fellow actors because they can't react to
that sounds like a lot of fun.
So it was a really fun role, but for me, it was also just at a very important turning point in my life. That was like, I'd come out of a really dark place. I'd kind of lost myself a bit, and I had slowly been reassembling the pieces of my life. And that was when I finally was like, oh, like this is an important piece of my life. Like I'm not me without this. So it was the role was a lot of fun, but it was also that opportunity coming around. It was one of those stars in alignment moments where like I was back on stage after a hiatus, and like it was just the right thing at the right time. And like it represents a big shift in my mindset of finally learning to listen to the voice inside and like standing up for myself and actually pursuing this for real and saying like, yeah, no, I'm gonna do this. Like, I don't care if other people think it's crazy or if they think that I'm being irresponsible or if they don't understand why I want to pursue it. I'm gonna do this, and actually like putting myself forward in that different way. So I'd say that one. And yeah, there was also one that we did a little while ago called The Liar, that we did at Bloor West, and that's all in iambic pentameter, and I did the whole thing in corsets and petticoats, and it was so fun.
Well, iambic pentameter, Shakespeare eat your heart out.
Yes, it was actually really cool because so it's not obviously a Shakespearean play, but it's written in the same style of prose, but it was written a bit after Shakespeare's time. I think it was written in like the 1600s. And it was just kind of cool because there's prose in the play referencing like the celebrity Shakespeare, you know? So it's just cool that like, even then he was this world-renowned like playwright, and they kind of poke fun at him a little bit. And then that has continued now. Like we still all know that name and his work, and it was cool. But it's this play, unlike Shakespeare, which has stayed very much in the original form. This one was originally written in French, and so it's had to be translated, and then it's also been updated a couple of times. So they reference things that we understand. Like the references have been replaced over time. So like they, at one point they say something about contact lenses. Like that wasn't a thing back then. But
well, they would have been, if they were, they would have been very uncomfortable.
Yeah, but it was a really, really cool play because of that, because it's been updated. It still has that feel, you know, it still very much takes place back then. And it still has that feel of the prose, and that you're seeing like this play. But I feel like for the audiences, they probably got a better sense during that play of what it would have been like to see a Shakespearean play back then. Because like back then it was like theater for the common man. You know, you'd pay your half a shilling and you'd buy your tankard of ale and you'd stand in the mud and you'd heckle the actors. Like that was Shakespeare.
That's right. That's
and
right.
Now
and
it's become
you'd be chatting with your buddies.
Jokes, horribly dirty jokes that we just don't get now. And like all these like political digs and like all this stuff, and like the way he plays with the language, and all of that was in this one. Like there were the dirty jokes, and they had like their jabs, and they make fun of the language too. Like there's a couple points in that play where the character is struggling finding a rhyme for the thing, so they'll like stretch a word or something, and like so they kind of have fun with the fact that it's in pentameter, and like, and again, like the body humor and all of that stuff, and because of the references, people could follow it even though it was rhyming really easily. And it's just, to me, I was like, this is what Shakespeare should be, you know, like it shouldn't be, it's become so academic because we don't speak that language anymore, that you have to be, you know, a scholar to understand. And it's become this very like polite society thing to go and see a Shakespeare play.
This is the thing, that there are so many layers of, I guess, layers of change since he wrote those, compared to, and I don't mean just like the several drafts that were done when before they printed it finally, but there's so much time that has passed, 400 years, that not only are those, like you say, the cultural references that were around in those days, and like the bawdy humor that nowadays we just don't get, it's changed so much, but also the pronunciation has changed a lot as well. So there's a guy, a dialect coach called Paul Meyer, and he got in contact with David Crystal, who's a linguist from the UK. I mean, both these guys are from the UK, but Meyer works in the US. And what they did was they got together and they directed a theater production in the original Shakespeare pronunciation. So have you ever heard of that? Like the original?
No.
It's pretty weird. And they did this for like an entire, I can't remember whether, I think there were actually two Shakespeare plays that they did this with. And they just basically trained all of the actors into the lines in the original 17th century Shakespearean pronunciations. And what happens is a lot of the rhymes start to work because you realize that the way that the spellings have pretty much stayed the same more or less, but the pronunciations have kind of like melted over 400 years, and some of them, they just don't rhyme anymore. But when you put it into the OP, the original, it's like, oh, okay, I get that now. And some of the jokes even make some sense too. So I don't know. I'd love to do that. I'd love to direct a Shakespeare play in like the original pronunciation and try to make it similar without the plagues. I mean, we've got the plague now as well. So
there's a reference that's going to come back around.
Okay. Yeah. It's another 100 years probably. Well, hopefully it'll be a long time. But so yeah, I know what you mean. It's like a lot of these things change, and that's a really interesting idea. Like getting them to kind of update it to make it still current.
Yeah.
And, I don't know. This guy was doing it the other way around, like sort of backdating it, making it like the way it sounded back then. But anyways, I just wanted to, I found a bit of video of you, and I just wanted to ask you what this is all about. Here we go. Just gonna play this, and then you can tell us what is going on. Right.
Do you want me to talk over it?
You can if you want.
There's not a whole lot of audio to go along with this. This is awesome. So I've started training in some stunt work, mostly stage combat and like action style stuff. This was a class that I took with Elon Rosenberg's group, and they do like kind of stunt training courses periodically through the year. You can find that through his site. And this was wire work day. So what you see here, that very first one in this video is my first wire lift ever. Not just with this crew, not just there, like ever. So you're like strapped in and they got the wires and you're like, great, the ground is going to leave me soon. It's just going to be gone. So that's why like the first time you're just like, whoa, and fall over. So then there's a few more, and you can see I get my sea legs, as it were, as we go through. And then we were just kind of playing with it to learn kind of how to move your body. So by the end, my thing was just to like superhero jump forward and then like power force back and then like land in a pose. It was lots of fun.
Awesome. Yeah, because it looks kind of, it looks like a lot of fun. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Like so much fun.
But it's definitely like there's lots of mats and stuff, like, because we're just learning, right? And it's also, that's a manual one, so there's a team of guys off camera going like, huh!
Oh, hoisting it, right? Yeah.
Part of it is timing that too. So like getting your team and yourself on board so you can be like, okay, and like, here we go. And then so they start to learn the movement I was going for, and then like, so that's why there's a few attempts anyway, and then as you go through, they become better and better and better, because it's all of us starting to work together. Like if you're doing that in a superhero movie, I'm pretty sure those things are automated and much, much bigger than that. Right. But it was just a first toe dip into the waters. Yeah.
Plus, you would probably have like hours and hours of makeup on.
Yes.
Either that, or you would be covered in like a blue onesie and ping pong balls everywhere.
Sure. Yeah, that's another option.
Yeah,
depending on your character.
Mocap. Yeah. So yeah, that looks like a lot of fun. So, would you classify this under like stunt work?
Wire? Yes.
Yeah. So how did you like first venture into stunt work then?
So I'm still figuring that out. Like if there's like 100 levels of stunts, I'm at like 2. I'm very new to that.
That's higher than a lot of other people, but
yeah, it's all kind of stemmed from. So I got into this through stage combat. It sort of stemmed from partially a desire to do some more kick-ass roles. I'm really passionate about bringing some more badass ladies to the silver screen. And so I wanted to be able to, you know, when it comes time to do a fight scene, I wanted to be able to do that justice and to do as much of it myself as possible, fully understanding once again that I'm not a stunt performer. So like any kind of backflips or leaping off buildings or getting set on fire, like I'm gonna need a double for that. But the more believable like my sword work or my stage like martial work looks, then the more believable of a scene it can get, and the more stuff we can do, right?
So what kinds of weapons have you started working with? Because I mean, I've done like way back in a former life. I did a bit of fencing, you know, like
actual fencing?
Like what?
Like actual fencing, like Olympic fencing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Olympic. Yes, I was an Olympic fencer. No, yeah, I basically learned how to like put a mask on and put a padded jack on, or what? It's not called a padded jack. That's a few centuries earlier. But you know, you put the padding on and the gloves and foil. I think I might have tried a saber at some point, but yeah, just foil. So it's like you learn the sext and carte and all the other bits and parry, riposte, and all that kind of stuff. So that was a lot of fun, but I can imagine that it's quite different from the stage version of sword fighting.
You're not supposed to hit anyone would be the first major difference. You don't get points if you hit anyone, you get fired. So that's a big difference. I'd say, to me, I always liken it to, it's like a very violent dance number. That's what you're going for.
That makes sense.
You have to work with your partner really closely. You have to know your partner really well and be able to like read their body language. You have to be really in sync and in tune to know like where you are at the fight. If your partner's ready to move on today, even if you normally take this beat really fast, maybe today you need an extra breather. Like you really have to be in it with your partner and then selling it so that it looks super painful and violent, but actually everybody feels secure and safe. So I've been studying that through Rapier Wit. I've been going up through the actor combatant training with Fight Directors of Canada. So right now I'm a certified intermediate actor combatant.
Wow.
So there's like beginner you do with 3 disciplines. So you learn like with a quarterstaff, and you do a small sword, and you do unskilled martial arts. So your average bar brawl type scene, which is a lot of fun. And then in intermediate, you go up to 4 disciplines. So in that, they do more of a skilled martial fight. They do rapier and dagger. So you've got like the 2 hands going on. You've got small sword and long sword. So your 2 hands are like medieval.
Like a double-handed, like a claymore, type double-handed thing.
Which is a lot of fun. They all are. I like them all. They're lots of fun. They're very different. And I've really enjoyed learning it. So like I said, partially that was because of wanting to be able to, move as a career move, but it was also because I've been on a few low budget sets where people have tried to save money by not hiring a stunt coordinator or a fight director. Don't do that, everybody. This is my thing in the industry for the sake of all performers everywhere. If you are a creator and you're tight on budget, everybody gets that. But if you cannot afford to do a scene safely, you can't afford to do the scene. So that's my little PSA for the day. Like you need to find a way to make it safe. Yeah. And if what you want to do requires a stunt coordinator, then wait until you have the budget for it, or find a way to not show exactly what you want to show until such time as you have the budget. Like there are ways around stuff, but I won't belabor that point. That's just my PSA, because it's not fair to put it on the actors to suddenly take on physical harm or mental harm because you weren't able to get the funding together. There's always a way to imply what happened, or do some force some creativity and still tell the story you want to tell while maintaining the safety of your performers. But I had been in quite a few positions, and as an actor, you don't want to be trouble on set, and so your actors are more likely to kind of try to just go along with it as opposed to sitting up themselves if they don't feel safe. And so that was one of the, as a self-preservation thing as well, I thought, the only way to make sure that there's somebody on set that can help me figure this stuff out is if I have the knowledge myself, because I will be on any set that I'm on and I can help myself figure it out. And know how to suggest tweaks. Because if you don't know anything, they tell you to do something and you feel uncomfortable and you don't want to be a bother, but you also don't know the words to use. You don't know why it's unsafe. Like, is it really unsafe, or am I just not really comfortable and there's no one there to show you? And then, so you just kind of not end up saying anything. Whereas now, again, I'm still just at the beginning parts of my journey, but with what I do know, most stories, you're not doing 10-minute sword fighting scenes, as awesome as that would be. Yeah. It's you fell off the bed, or there's a slap. Your partner gets mad at you and somebody slaps someone, or it's you get hit across the head and you fall unconscious. They're not these belabored scenes, but each of those things technically is a stunt that you need to know how to handle, especially if someone's hitting the ground. As soon as somebody has to fall down, that's a stunt. You have to know how to fall safely and all that stuff. So knowing what I know now, it's already given me enough know-how in a few other situations that have come up where I've been able to advocate for myself or another actor who's on the set and be like, hey, have you guys thought about how this could impact them or what you're going to do to make it safe? And then I can throw out some suggestions if they haven't, and then made it safe. So the one time I was supposed to fall from a ladder onto an ottoman and hit my head on the corner, and they're like, so you're just going to do that and it'll be fine. I was like, no, it won't. No, it won't. I'm like, I'm a wire rig here and I can't slow gravity midair. I don't have that skill. So instead we instead of just being no, the training has helped me to be able to have a more constructive conversation about it. Okay, I understand the story beat that we're going for. What if we, do it like this and this, and then we could edit it like that. And then how would that work? And they're like, okay. So we ended up doing it in pieces so that they could, cut it in and out, and then I don't die. Yeah. Which is preferred.
Exactly. I know exactly what you're talking about because, and you did play a part in this, like in the play that stage play that I was in again with Lower West Village.
Mhm.
Um, and we had a stunt coordinator on that, and and you were working as our intimacy coach, which we'll
Mhm.
come to next.
Yeah.
But there were several scenes in that. In fact, my character was the only one that didn't actually really get involved in a fight scene, right? But I was still involved in like things, for example, where at one point, I don't want to give too much away, but at one point he has to slap someone.
Mhm.
And so that had to be coordinated just the right way at just the right angle so that it looked like, you know, it he was slapping that character properly and it
Yeah.
sounded like that person was being slapped. But it had to be at just the right angle and it had to be at just the right distance that I wasn't actually slapping that actor.
Yeah.
So that was very useful. And another one was like just another small part was like there's a character that has to bring a gun. And in the directions in the play, it says he puts the gun in his mouth. And at this point, it's like, okay, the stunt director goes, hang on a minute. This is probably not a good idea because then this other person has to come up and pull the gun away from you. If the barrel of the gun is in your mouth, you're probably going to lose some of your teeth at some point one night.
Yeah.
Like, I hadn't thought of that. Plus the fact that putting a dirty gun in your mouth, it's probably
Yeah.
not a great idea. So,
I wouldn't touch any like nothing that's been backstage at a theater is like, no, that's
yeah,
not going in my mouth.
no.
Like, no.
In the
Be
end, we went for it
sterilized.
under the chin. So,
Yeah.
but there was a big fight scene in that, and that was, I mean, the thing is, even when you do have a fight coordinator, things still go wrong.
Absolutely. It's still live,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
But it's like if you think of stunts and fights kind of like magic tricks, like everything has its trick, right? So it's kind of like I've been on a couple sets and they're like, "All right, this is what you're going to do." And you're like, "Uh-huh. That sounds terrifying. Tell me how it's going to be safe." And then they like reveal the secret to you. And it's one of those things where like once you see it, you're like, "Okay,
and
fine."
this
Yeah.
perfectly connects us into the next thing, which is you've been training as an intimacy coach, and as I said, I've seen your work. You advised us as cast members on what to do and how to go about it, and that was for me that was fascinating because that was the first time I'd ever come across anybody doing intimacy coaching or advising. So tell us more about what that is and
Right.
why we haven't really heard of them before. Me too.
Yeah, this is definitely a passion of mine. Before we delve into this area, I want to give my little caveat. I am not certified in any way yet with any of the overseeing boards. It's a very new field, so the certification process has been, transforming over time. But like intimacy directors and intimacy coordinators are certified professionals who've gone through a lot more training than I have for stage or screen, and you can find them on the IDC website and find that like these amazing professionals. So I'm not at that level yet. I am very passionate about this. I have taken a few workshops. I have like baby knowledge so far, but some of the community theater groups that I've worked with before, like Bloor West, who's awesome, and they take their stuff very seriously. Their budget's very, very small, and a couple of other community theater type projects where I know, their budget is very minimal. They want to do right by their actors, and most of the time, what they're doing in that kind of low budget scenario is fairly simplistic. It's not a complicated scene. It's simple moments. So we came up with intimacy coach as a title for me for that production, because I thought it wasn't a thing. So if that is a thing and I've repurposed something that means something, please somebody let me know and I will come up with a different name for it in the interim. But basically I was trying to come up with something to call myself that didn't imply that I had a certification that I didn't. And what I told them when I came on to work on the project was like, reading the script, I think I can do it. I don't know if one of your actors is going to have something happening or that maybe I won't be equipped to do so. And if that's the case, then I would forfeit my fee so that they could go and hire somebody who's much more, and then they don't lose their budget that way. But these scenes were incredibly simple. And that's also why I started our work together that way, because I didn't want to misrepresent myself, especially when you're working in an environment like that, where you're trying to build a trusting, safe, collaborative environment. I wanted everyone to kind of know where I'm at and why I was there. That being said, why I was there is because, much like fight scenes of intimacy can lead to a lot of feelings of uncertainty and not being safe and vulnerability. And once again, having been in several performances where something like that has arisen, and unfortunately, it's just sometimes it's handled badly. Most of the time, I would say it's just not handled at all. Especially because of Me Too, people like your directors and your stage managers, and they don't want to force you to do something that would make you uncomfortable. So instead, they provide no guidance whatsoever, and they leave it to like, okay, well, do what you feel comfortable with, and we'll work with that. And my response to that is always like, okay, but what I'm comfortable with is never kissing that person that I don't know ever. That's what I'm comfortable with. So if you need me to kiss this person, we're going to need to talk this through. Like, we need to have a process. And it's just so, like, it's so crazy to think about. If you put, like, would you ever like create a musical and leave your big dance number for people to just kind of do what they want and what they're comfortable with, and just kind of figure something out, and then we'll work with it? No, it's at the crux of the musical. Everybody's watching. It's the big moment. Like, you need to make sure that this lands. And if you have like the same thing with a fight, like, even having fight coordinators and such is a relatively new-ish idea. But now it's like, no, like, you want to train your actors, you want to make sure that they're safe, you're going to like make sure everything's coming together and that all the pieces are moving properly, and we're going to rehearse this and rehearse and rehearse and rehearse and rehearse. But when you look at a scene of intimacy, which is often also at like the crux of the movie, like if you're looking at a romance, like, this is the moment, but we're just going to like not address it or talk about it or like orchestrate it, or we're going to
do your thing, do what you think is
it's crazy. And like, especially since, like, if you think about, like, if you're reading a novel and it just said like they have an intimate moment, what does that mean? That could be everything. I could share a secret, we could be holding hands, we could it could be such a spectrum of things. And then it puts it on the actors to then suddenly talk to somebody that they don't know about like, but like, you want to make it good and you don't want to be holding people back, but you don't want to push the other person. And it's just, it makes it like horrible. Plus, if you leave it to people without guidance who don't have a vocabulary for this kind of stuff, it can be difficult mentally to go through these scenes. When you're going and you're pretending to be in love with somebody over and over and over and over and over again, your body is like, oh, are we in love with this person? Because every time we see them, we behave as though we're in love with this person. I know what this means. We're in love with this person. You have to work through that, like, mentally. You have to like have some tools, but it's usually, again, not addressed. So like, I understand why we kind of got to this place, but I'm so glad that things like intimacy coordination are starting to get more traction and people have heard about them now. Like, when I first started talking about it to people, it was like they'd never heard about it. I'd never heard about it. And it's just having had the chance now to work on a production and we had an intimacy coordinator, and comparing that to all of those times when I didn't, it is, so from an actor's perspective, it's night and day what happens. You know, like when you're trying to figure something out under the way things used to be, it was so uncomfortable and so unsafe, and like I never felt good about it all the way through, and people are hesitant and just awkward, and it feels strange.
Yeah.
And when you have that person there to like help you figure it out and address your questions, and you start to see it as just another part of the scene that you get to be creative with, and make sure that you're making your character choices and telling the story, and it becomes part of the creative process instead of this like weird hurdle to it. And you get better scenes this way.
Mhm.
When you're like if you think about it again, like as a fight, if I know I'm not going to hurt you, then I can attack you more viciously because I know where the secrets are. I know how to not hurt you. And the same exact thing applies in scenes of intimacy. If I know that I can behave in a certain way and it won't push you or trigger you or harm you or scar you in any way, then I'm free. And I know that also you're not going to hurt me in any way. Then I'm free to fully commit to those moments, to throw myself into them and to really sell that story, as opposed to like holding back because I don't really know what the heck is going on. And then like the couple of times I've had the opportunity to help, again, like if you're a director or something who's hesitant about bringing someone in because you think it's going to impede their creativity or something, like I implore you to give it a try, because the couple of times I've gone in, it has been like, I wish there's some kind of like tangible scientific meter to like read tension in a space. Because when I walk in on those days, everyone looks at me like this. And they're like, oh, I hear you're
That
here.
was probably me. I was like, when you came in, it's probably like,
We're going to work on the kisses today. I was
yeah,
kind of hoping we'd never have to do that.
yeah.
Like,
I think I was probably at the back going like this.
yeah, that's the body language from everybody, like the directors included, because they don't know, like if they haven't been trained in this, they're feeling awkward about it as well. Like they want a good scene, but they don't want to hurt people, or like, so part of it is just figuring out a vocabulary that everybody can use to make sure that we're speaking the same language and that we know where those boundaries are and all of that. And by the end of the session, it's like there's this moment where everyone's like, oh, okay. And then it becomes a creative scene and we're building a
Yeah,
scene. I feel like people are like,
exactly.
it's that magic that happens when you know that your boundaries are going to be respected, and that you know how to respect somebody else's boundaries.
Yeah.
Because we've established what they are, and I know how to
Yes.
communicate if new ones come up. And like what happens if one day I have a different one. Like we talk about all
Yeah.
of that, and then it makes it like a freedom like playground, as opposed to this like horrible like, terrifying
Exactly.
experience.
Exactly. I remember you described it perfectly, because that's exactly how it was. Like, so for example, I should explain, in the scene that I'm in, my character has as you say, an intimate moment with a female character. Well, I should just say with another character. It doesn't matter whether it's a female or male, but trying not to give too much away, just in case you go and see the play and not infringe on copyright. So he has an intimate scene, and basically they kiss, they embrace, they kiss a couple of times. They touch, they sit next to each other, and so on, and it's very intimate. And I know that at the beginning, like in rehearsals in the beginning, it was so kind of awkward and wooden, because of exactly what you said. You have your you have your idea of what what is societally permitted in your culture. And in Canada, culturally, I mean, even before COVID happened, you stand 6 feet away from somebody. It's different from, like, for example, in Korea, it's like twice that distance. In Brazil, it's half that. Brazil and Mexico, you're a lot more closer to someone when you're talking to them. But here it's like, your arm's length, if it's maybe even if it's a friend. So all of a sudden it becomes so weird when it's somebody that you hardly know and you have to invade that space and become their lover. So, of course, at the beginning, you would have seen that, where it was like everyone's like, okay, they kiss.
Yeah.
and so you were able to break that down stage by stage and explain everything through from the subconscious messaging and everything to putting it out there like this is what it is and this is how it will work and what do you think, how are you feeling about this? And so by the end of that session it was like, okay, this seems perfectly normal now that I'm holding her around the waist and she's leaning on me and all of that, and each of those scenes just seemed to be after that a lot more natural. And like you say, you give the language for how to get that, oh, is this okay? Is it, I was just thinking, how about like he might touch her, he might touch her there on the arm. He might kiss her there. And it's like, is that okay? And it's like, yeah, that's fine. And then people would tell you, like you were given the language for how to refuse, right? Because that's very awkward too. If like in real life, it's very awkward if someone's like, well, actually, don't touch me, but in the on the stage, it's like, okay, well, does this seem right for you as your character? How do you feel as a person with that sort of movement or whatever? And then if it's like, I'd rather not, there are ways of saying, well, how about this instead?
Yeah.
So all of that was really very useful. And yeah, I totally agree with you. If there is a play with a so-called intimate moment, as it's often written, you should bring someone in who
Bring
has
someone in. It's gonna make your scene better. It's gonna make
definitely.
it's gonna make your actors feel safer, and therefore your scene will be better. And quite frankly, it'll take a load off you as the director as well, because again, like you have someone who can help you navigate and get what you want out of that scene properly. Now, like the more complex your scene gets, like the more specialized your intimacy coordinator or director should be. Different people have different like focuses, and if there's any violence that blends with the intimacy, you want to get somebody who knows some fight direction and stuff as well, to mix that in. But there's so many amazingly talented people out there, and the community is growing constantly, and it's so reassuring to see, like for the performer in me, that this is starting to pick up actual momentum, and that production companies are taking this seriously, because it's important. It's important for people. Like there's stories of people who've been taken advantage of in this way in a production, and they quit their whole career because they're so uncomfortable and so scarred and so damaged that they feel like they're not listened to, and they just give up their whole career because of it. And
Wow.
it's a shame. Like we're silencing so many voices because of this hurdle, when it's here now. Like we have a way to overcome it and to work through it. And I think that's our prerogative. If a story's worth telling, it's worth telling properly. And once again, much like with the fights, like if you can't afford to do the scene safely,
Can't afford to do the scene.
you can't afford to do the scene. You can, again, like there's maybe creative ways to imply and suggest, and
Yeah.
but if you actually want to show, if you want your actors to do it, you need to provide them a safe platform
Okay.
to do it in.
All right. Now,
Yeah.
I've seen your reel on IMDb and some other stuff that you've uploaded as well. And I noticed that your Southern US accent and your received pronunciation accents, they're pretty good. They're quite convincing. So I think I can also reveal that you've been polishing your Irish accent more recently as well. And I just wondered, how important do you think it is for actors to add accents to their acting resumes?
Hmm. This is like the eternal debate as well. Here's the thing. You don't have to. You don't have to.
Yeah.
There are plenty of people who don't do any accents and they have their career. It depends on the kind of career that you want and the kinds of characters that you want to portray. I look at accents the same way I look at any other special skill that you might have. You know, it's a great way to add something else to your resume. It might open some doors to characters that were otherwise closed to you. Um, but you know, if it's going to just be a burden, like there's no point making your life miserable, but maybe work on some other skills that you do enjoy doing. But to me, it has opened, like there's been several parts that I've received because of various accents. I'm not great at like at a party. Like I know some people can just, you know, they flip into 50 different accents and it's no
Yeah.
big deal. And like for me, I kind of gotta like get my head into it. Except with
Yeah.
my British RP, for whatever reason, I've been doing that since I was really little. I don't even know why, but like I'd be a kid and like I'd be running around my friend's house talking in a British accent all day. I remember like my friend's mom was like, "Look, oh, are you like from England?" I was like, "No." Like I don't know why. Just
I
have
noticed
always
that
done
about some kids too. Like, I mean,
that.
of course, like, yeah, with my kids, I mean, obviously, I mean, both their parents are British, right? And we don't
Yeah,
really have RP accents, but you know, they've watched Harry Potter, and that you know that you pick it up. So I think a lot of kids do see a lot of British stuff, which tends
yeah,
to have a lot of RP accents for a lot of the characters, and so yeah, I see what you mean. Like kids will pick that up, but
yeah. It's just like a random one that I've done, but the rest of them have slowly joined my repertoire, usually because of various productions. Like Irish, I did for a musical that I did like 5 years ago. Um, so when you started doing your weekly drop-ins for the Irish accent, I was like, okay, well, this will be a good way to brush it off. It's been a hot minute. Um, but like so I've done performances in Boston accent, Russian accent, uh, Irish, and then you know like they slowly add in there, and like some of them I find easier, depending I guess on your musculature. I'm sure some feel more natural than others.
local placement, yeah.
Yeah,
Which
some
you,
of them
you
it
can
takes
learn,
me like a while to like. Russian's not one I can just put
but
on. I feel like I also find with those though, it's like what you're reading um, really helps because like with the Boston one, it was actually for an all-female production of Glengarry Glen Ross, and I got pulled into that like last minute. They'd had somebody quit like a week before they went live.
wow.
So they were like, "We need you to do this," and I was like, "Oh
Yeah,
my god, okay." And I was like, I told them, I was like, "I'll do this." I'm like, "But I can't do a Boston accent, and I don't have time, so I'm not doing it." And they were like, "Fine, no problem. It's don't even worry about it." But as I was like reading the script, it was harder to do it without it. So by the time we were done memorizing, like the lines were just written with that intonation and like that melody. Like each
yeah,
dialect has its own melody. So by the time we were done, they're like, "I thought you weren't going to do the accent." I'm like, didn't know I could. Look at
right.
that. Could I
That's
just,
right. I think well, a lot of it is being a lot of that it's being receptive to it, right?
yeah,
And it's not you know, I mean, I haven't really found anything that I can that's not a clumsy analogy, but I keep thinking of driving, like learning to drive, right?
yeah,
And like when you first get in a car and someone's telling you, okay, now what you need to do is first, you know, you need to check your mirror, then you need to put it into gear. So all of these things are using all these different muscles in your body, and you know you're doing all of these things and you're doing them one by one at first, and you first like kangaroo that freaking vehicle
yeah,
along the parking lot, right? And then like but after you've had some lessons, after you get the feel for it, and before you know it, you're putting it into gear, you're checking your your wing mirror, your rear view mirror, you're putting it into the first gear and you're off smoothly, right? But, you know, and nobody goes straight onto the highway after 3 lessons. It is something that you manage to coordinate all of these things, because with an accent, it's like you say, you pick up the intonations, the melodies of the accent, the vocal posture. You get an idea from watching and listening to somebody who actually speaks in the accent. You get an idea for the timbre of the voice, like where it sits in there. and and also over through lots and lots of listening, you get to hear about those different lexical sets. What words rhyme with other words that don't in your own accent? Is it an R pronouncing accent? Is it not? So all of those things you kind of you don't really pick up fast in half an hour. But it's a process of like immersing yourself into it. And like you say, the script itself and being in the character, it's a part of the character. It's not just something, it's not like a toupee that you just stick on the top. It's like a full kind of thing.
Yeah. If something is written in a dialect, it's difficult to read it without it. It's
right.
Like you're fighting that melody, and the cadence feels forced, I find, without it. But I always find like there's kind of the 2 phases of dialect learning for me. There's like okay, I can read this script that's written in this dialect in a passable accent. And then I can now improv and say whatever I want in this dialect, which is a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's one thing to kind of see it written and realize that there's like a cadence or a melody, but you have to have a deeper understanding of it to be able to like structure your own sentences.
Yeah.
In that way,
being able to go freestyle with it, that's when you really have that accent. And so I think a lot of actors don't like, especially if they're going for an audition or something. Obviously, they just want to get the lines down. They just want to have that to go in with and not have to really think about the lines. But like when you've booked that role, when you've got it, it's a case of being able to feel quite comfortable to go out to this. Well, these days you can't really go to the store. Maybe you get a coffee, but like to order, and I've done this. Where, what accent was it in? Oh, it was for not Johannesburg, but it was for a South African accent, like an Afrikaner accent. So I went down to the Tim Hortons and I said, "Yeah, I like a coffee and I'll have a donut as well, please." So it was like, so I'm like, am I going to do this? Yeah, like they don't give a fuck where you're from, especially in Toronto. So you just go in with this accent and just use it to order your coffee or whatever you're getting, or the pizza that you're ordering on the phone. They might a couple of times say, "I'm sorry, what was that?" But it's the ability you have to practice it to be able to fit in it properly. Yeah, break it in new shoes really is what it is.
So I think that like answered your question. Overall, I'd say it's helpful to have accents. They don't have to have.
Yeah, you answered it perfectly. Yeah, you answered it perfectly. You're absolutely right. I totally agree with you. I totally agree with it. You don't need to have those accents. I'm a little bit I know you didn't say this, but I'm a bit skeptical about people who say, "Well, I can't do accents." It's like, well, you think you can, but maybe you've been let down by someone giving you a bad time about an accent you're trying to do, or you just haven't tried. But the thing is, like, yeah, you're right. You don't have to have them, because you can have a decent career as an actor without them. In fact, Sean Connery, his entire career he used his one accent the whole time. That was fine.
Arnold Schwarzenegger is pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. The same thing. Those guys are few and far between. You don't get many actors like that, but but I know what you mean. It's not necessary, but it does open up
more tools in your toolbox when you're developing a character, right? Like it gives you an extra flavor you can add if you want.
Exactly. Just like the swashbuckling and the horse riding and so on.
Swashbuckling with an accent, and then
makes me think of Robin Hood. Now, before you go, I just want to ask, what are you up to these days? Because aren't you in a couple of shorts? You've been. Would you like to talk about those, or?
So these days things are a little slow.
Yeah, everyone's been saying that.
Yeah, I've been
True.
working on a couple things that I can't talk about. Just like little projects here and there. I'd say most recently, like the biggest one that's like out there is the Paperboy. It was a short that we did 2 years ago, I guess. We didn't do it this year, so um, it's like it's such a cute movie. I'm so proud of that one. It's this love affair to the 80s that they made, and it's about a little kid on his paper route. And if you want like a hefty dose of nostalgia, that'll do it for you. It's just so endearing and so well made. It's been in a bunch of festivals. It's won a few awards.
Wow, cool.
I tried to see if it was going to be screening on any more online festivals. There aren't any dates currently, but hopefully it'll be like able to be released at some point, and then people can see it en masse because it's so fun. But yeah, other than that, pardon?
Who do you play in the Paperboy?
I play one of the neighbors, so he's like going around to the houses and the people who subscribe to his papers, and I'm like this rock and roll 80s chick who's got like the side ponytail and the like dangly earrings, and I got the ripped t-shirt, and like it was so good. It's so fun.
I can see you doing that.
Any excuse for a side pony, man. It's it's not a hairstyle you can just rock every day. Well, I mean, you could, but it's a little out of its time.
Yeah, it's a little bit eccentric.
Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, I mean, that's making the rounds. There's a few things that should hopefully be done at some point, and then I can talk about those. And otherwise, it's lots of training. I'm jumping into trying to write my first screenplay, so we'll see how it goes.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity during this insane quarantine lockdown time to work on some other skills and figure out things that we can, like accent training. It's a great thing to do from
There
the
you go.
silence of your home or isolation of your home. What are things I can keep working on now? Kind of keep asking myself that question.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that 2021 will be a much better year for us, like generally, not just in terms of like planning for what we want to do for the future, but in terms of like maybe mental health and so on. So, because it kind of 2020 just sucked, and and it is now, as we speak, New Year's Eve. So I want to wish you a happy New Year.
You as well.
Hours time, and to everybody out there as well, happy New Year, and I hope 2021 brings you much better days than 2020 did. So, Krista Barzso or Barzso, or however you want to pronounce it, thank you so much for coming on Talk Like That, and we look forward to seeing other stuff that you've written and appeared in.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Bye, Krista.